The only sound in the courtroom is the steady scratch of Ethan Ward's pen sliding across the divorce papers. Each stroke feels like it's being carved into my ribs. I sit beside him at the polished wooden table, hands locked together so tightly my knuckles ache. The plum dress I chose this morning, simple, conservative, the same one in the photo folder my attorney insisted we use, is smoothed carefully over my knees. Beside me, Ethan looks like he's posing for a magazine spread, navy suit perfectly tailored, tie straight, hair immaculate. He signs his name like he's autographing a fans program, not ending a 10-year marriage. Behind us, in the second row, Lena Marsh crosses her legs and settles deeper into the bench. Her dress is a bold yellow that doesn't belong in a room this somber, but that's the point. She wants to be seen. She's already sitting like she owns his last name, like this is her coronation and I'm just the opening act being shuffled off stage. Finally free, Ethan murmurs to his attorney, loud enough that it lands squarely between my ears. She should be grateful I'm letting her keep anything at all. His lawyer, a man whose cufflinks probably cost more than my car, huffs a quiet laugh. Behind us, Lena's soft chuckle floats forward like perfume. Heat crawls up my neck, but I keep my face still. That's what he's expecting, some display. Tears, anger, a scene. Something he can point to later and say, see? See how unreasonable she is? Mr. Ward. Judge Marianne Keller lifts her gaze from the file in front of her, ice cool over the rims of her glasses. This is a court of law, not a locker room. Show some respect for these proceedings and for Mrs. Carson. Soon-to-be ex-Mrs. Carson, Ethan corrects smoothly, the corner of his mouth lifting. My apologies, Your Honor. I'm just relieved. This has been a long time coming. He adjusts his blue tie, the one I bought him when he landed his first big contract and came home spinning me around the tiny kitchen of our old apartment. I remember the pride on his face that night, the way he told me, we're a team, Nye. Your sacrifices, they're going to pay off for us. Back then, I believed him. Now, he sits inches away from me, treating the end of our marriage like the closing of an annoying business deal. I press my fingernails into my palms under the table, anchoring myself. My folder is slim, one blue binder filled with carefully tabbed documents. His side of the table is crowded with files and legal pads and an attorney who bills by the minute. To anyone watching, it looks like exactly what Ethan wants them to see, a successful man tying up loose ends with the quiet wife who couldn't keep up. He made sure of that. He was the one who asked me to leave my job at the nonprofit just for a year so he could focus on expanding his company. He was the one who said joint accounts would make us stronger, that couples who loved each other didn't track who earned what. He was the one who started handling all the bills, all the investments, all the paperwork until my signature vanished from everything that mattered. I thought I was being supportive. He was redesigning the cage. Ethan leans toward his lawyer, and the two of them exchange a look that makes my stomach roll. They don't bother lowering their voices much. She doesn't have a leg to stand on, Ethan says. No income. No assets. She'll take whatever we give her. My cheeks burn. I stare straight ahead, refusing to turn around, but the back of my neck prickles. I can feel Lena's gaze on me like sunlight through glass. In my peripheral vision, the yellow of her dress is a bright flare against the dark suits and muted blouses of the rest of the gallery. Ethan used to say I had quiet elegance. Lena doesn't do quiet anything. She radiates newness, fresh lipstick, fresh ambition, fresh loyalty to the man who thinks he's untouchable. I wonder how long it will last when she finds out what he's really like when the door closes. Mrs. Carson. Judge Keller's voice slices through the fog in my head. I straighten in my seat. Do you understand the terms of the settlement as presented? Every eye shifts to me, Ethan's bored confidence, Lena's thinly veiled satisfaction, the curious faces in the benches behind us. For years, I let this man decide who I was, the supportive wife, the grateful dependent, the woman who should be thankful he chose her. My father never saw me that way. For a flicker of a second, the courtroom blurs and I see him instead, Henry Carson, hands stained with engine grease, smiling from behind the counter at his small neighborhood shop. I hear his voice in my head, steady as ever. Respect isn't given, baby girl. It's earned. And some men only respect what they can't control. At the time, I thought he was talking about customers who tried to haggle. I didn't realize he was talking about Ethan. I draw a breath that feels like the first full one I've taken all morning. Beside me, my attorney, Grace Lattimore, shifts in her seat, the subtle rustle of paper our private signal. We spent weeks preparing for this moment, hours poring over documents that had been gathering dust in a basement I'd avoided since my father's funeral. Your Honor, Grace says, rising smoothly to her feet before I can respond. Before Mrs. Carson answers, we respectfully request that the court review a matter related to the estate of her late father, Henry Carson. Ethan's pen stalls halfway to the final line. The muscles in his jaw twitch. My father's estate, he repeats, slow, like the words are foreign. His eyes flick toward me, then to Lena, then back to the judge. With respect, I don't see how that's relevant. Henry was a mechanic. He left her a shop full of broken cars and a box of tools. That's hardly. Grace slides a sealed envelope across the table, her expression serene. The court will find that it is no longer an accurate description, Mr. Ward. From the gallery, a figure rises, an older man with silver hair and a measured stride. Samuel Keller, retired judge, executor of my father's estate, and husband to the woman currently presiding over my divorce. He carries a leather portfolio that suddenly feels heavier than anything in this room. The air shifts. Even Lena sits up straighter. Judge Keller's gaze sharpens as she accepts the envelope from Grace. Very well. We'll address this estate issue before we finalize any settlement. As she breaks the seal, Ethan turns toward me, confusion knitting his brow for the first time all day. What did your father do, Naomi? He whispers. For 10 years, Ethan thought he knew everything about me, what I owned, what I needed, what I was willing to lose. He has no idea that the dead man he dismissed as just a mechanic has been silently waiting for this exact moment. The judge begins to read, her voice steady, the words echoing off the wood-paneled walls. And as she speaks my father's name, the courtroom fades, and my mind tumbles backwards. Back to the night I opened those dusty boxes in his basement. Back to the discovery that my life was built on secrets I never knew existed. That was the night everything started to crack. Back then, I still thought Ethan's worst betrayal was sleeping with the woman in yellow. I had no idea that what he was really cheating on was the truth. Before we begin, tap subscribe so you never miss the next story. 6 months earlier, our lives still looked intact from the outside. We were the couple people pointed to at networking events, Ethan, the charming founder of Ward Strategic, and me, the supportive wife who remembered everyone's names and brought homemade lemon bars to office parties. I'd gotten so good at playing my part that sometimes I forgot it was a role. The first real crack came one Thursday night. Ethan said he'd be working late to wrap a client presentation, so I tried to be the easygoing spouse he claimed to need. I put away the leftovers, wiped down the counters, and sat on the couch with my laptop, pretending to read job postings I knew he didn't want me to apply for. Around 11, my eyes were burning from the screen. I was about to text him when his phone, which he'd forgotten on the hall table, lit up. First with a text. Lena Marsh, still at the office. Hurry back. I'm cold without you. Then with a call from the same name. For a long second, I just stared at the screen, watching his smiling contact photo pulse with each ring. My stomach went hollow, like I'd stepped off a curb I hadn't seen. By the time I answered, the call had gone to voicemail. A new notification popped up. New message from Lena Marsh. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Instead, I sat there, perfectly still, listening to the blood rushing in my ears. I told myself it could be innocent. People joked. People flirted. It didn't have to mean. The front door opened. Ethan stepped in, tie loosened, jacket over his arm, smelling like expensive cologne and the faintest trace of someone else's perfume. Not mine. Hey, he said, like nothing was wrong. You're up late. I held out his phone. You forgot this. He froze for half a second, just long enough, if I'd been less in denial, to tell me everything I needed to know. Then the smooth mask slid back into place. Thanks, Nye. He took it, glanced at the screen, and laughed. God, that woman. You give a junior associate an inch, she takes your whole calendar. Lena? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. He waved a hand, already walking toward the bedroom. She's just needy. You know how people get when they want a promotion. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If he'd said, it's not what you think, I might have pressed. But that easy dismissal, that lazy assumption that my concerns were an inconvenience, it worked better than any denial. It made me feel petty for even asking. So I swallowed it. Like always. The money started feeling strange around the same time. For years, Ethan had insisted on handling the finances. You hate numbers, he'd say, kissing my forehead. Let me take that stress off your plate. I did hate numbers, so it felt like kindness. But then the credit card I used for groceries declined one afternoon, in the middle of the produce aisle. I remember the cashier's polite smile, the way people in line pretended not to listen. That's impossible, I told her, heat creeping up my neck. There must be some mistake. I called Ethan from the car, embarrassment fizzing in my veins. Relax, he said. I moved some things around. The bank probably flagged the card. I'll fix it. But we're fine, right? I asked. You said the company. The company is fine, he snapped. Then, softer, Naomi, I'm juggling a lot right now. You quitting your job means I'm carrying everything. Trust me, okay? I've got us. I hated how quickly his tone could make me feel guilty. Like I'd done something wrong by asking where the money that used to be mine had gone. That night, when he was in the shower, I opened our banking app. The login screen blinked back at me. Incorrect password. I tried again. Same result. When I asked him about it, he laughed. Oh, right. I changed it. New security protocols. I'll send it to you later. He never did. Instead, the next week, he came home with a thin folder and a pen. Sign these, he said, dropping the papers in front of me while I was chopping onions. What are they? Some restructuring stuff. Liability protection. My lawyer says it's standard. You trust me, don't you? The onions burned my eyes so badly I couldn't tell what else might have been stinging. I flipped through the pages, but the legal language blurred. "Can't we get my lawyer to look at it?" I asked. "Or at least have your guy explain." "My guy charges $500 an hour," Ethan cut in. "You want to pay that just so he can tell you I'm right?" When I hesitated, he sighed dramatically. "You know what? It's fine. I thought we were partners, but if you'd rather treat me like some stranger trying to scam you." That did it. The shame. The suggestion that my caution was betrayal. I signed. My father died 2 months later. A heart attack, the doctor said. Quick and unforgiving. 1 minute he was arguing with a supplier over spark plugs, the next, he was gone. The world moved in slow motion after that. I remember the smell of motor oil clinging to his work shirts when I packed them into boxes. The way the tiny waiting room at the shop felt too big without him behind the counter, offering coffee to nervous customers. Ethan was polite. Efficient. He handled the funeral arrangements, made sure the obituary was in the paper, shook hands with people whose names he didn't bother to remember. He gave a speech that sounded like it had been copied from a template: "Hard-working man, devoted father, will be missed." Then, 3 days after we buried my father, Ethan came into the kitchen with a stack of envelopes. "Henry didn't leave much," he said, sliding them toward me. "Just some outstanding bills and the deed to that rust bucket of a garage. We'll need to decide whether to sell it or bulldoze it." The words knocked the air out of me. "Bulldoze it?" I repeated. "That's his life's work." "Exactly," Ethan said. "His life. He's gone, Naomi. That place is just going to bleed money. Taxes, upkeep, liability, it's a mess. Better to unload it while someone still thinks it's worth something." I stared at the envelopes, at the shaky handwriting on the top one, my name, written in my father's familiar scrawl. "I'll go through it," I said quietly, pulling the letters back toward me. "It's my responsibility." Ethan's jaw flexed, but he let it go. "Suit yourself. Just don't get sentimental and thank our finances in the process, okay? We're already stretched thin." He said it was like my grief was another expense. For weeks, I avoided the shop. I told myself I was too busy. Helping Ethan entertain clients. Organizing the house. Pretending our bank account wasn't a black box I was no longer allowed to see into. In truth, I just couldn't bear walking into that space without my father there. The thought of his empty stool by the workbench, his coffee mug still on the shelf, it made my chest tighten. Then one afternoon, everything broke open. I came home early from a brunch with an old coworker Ethan didn't like. He said she was a bad influence, always putting ideas in my head about going back to work. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. Ethan's car was still in the driveway, but he wasn't on the couch, or in his office, or in the kitchen. Voices drifted down the hall, low, breathy, punctuated by a laugh I recognized from a dozen office parties. Lena's. I don't remember deciding to move. My body just did. I followed the sound to the guest room, the one we'd once talked about turning into a nursery. The door was half closed. Through the crack, I saw a flash of yellow dress on my sheets, Ethan's hand in her hair, his mouth against her throat. The soft, practiced apology he'd given me months ago replayed in my head, but this time there was no space for doubt. I backed away so quietly even the floorboards didn't protest, grabbed my keys, and walked straight out of the house. My hands didn't stop shaking until I was parked in front of my father's shop. The garage looked smaller than I remembered. Dusty windows. Faded sign. The metal door was half rolled down, like it was bowing its head. I unlocked the side entrance and stepped inside. The smell hit me first: oil and rubber and the faint citrus of the cleaner he used on the counters. It was like walking into a memory that hadn't realized the person it belonged to was gone. "Hey, Daddy," I murmured, because it felt wrong not to say it. Sunlight filtered through the grimy glass, catching dust motes in the air. His tools were still lined up on the pegboard in precise rows. The calendar on the wall was frozen on the month he died, a red circle around the date of an oil change that would never happen. I moved through the office on autopilot, fingers trailing over the worn surface of his desk. The chair creaked when I sank into it. For a moment, I just sat there, letting the silence wash over me. Then I noticed the boxes. They were stacked neatly against the back wall, 5 of them, labeled in his blocky handwriting. Taxes. Vendors. Customers. Personal. And one, at the very bottom, half hidden behind the others, Naomi. I stared at that last box, my throat thick. "Really, Dad?" I whispered. "You leave me a whole box and then just die?" I dragged it out, blowing dust off the top. The tape peeled away with a reluctant hiss. Inside were manila folders, each one labeled with a year. Some went back more than a decade. Tucked between them were envelopes, all with my name on them, all unopened. My hands trembled as I picked up the top envelope. The paper had yellowed around the edges, but the ink was still dark. "To my daughter, when she's ready." I didn't feel ready for anything. My marriage was a lie, my bank account a mystery, my future a question mark. But the alternative was going back home and listening to Ethan tell me I'd imagined what I'd just seen. So I opened it. The letter inside was short. My father's voice, somehow both gruff and gentle, spilled off the page. "If you're reading this, Naomi, I'm not there to say this to your face, so you'll have to forgive me for putting it on paper instead. There are things you don't know about me. Things I didn't tell you because I wanted you to live your life for you, not for my money. When the time is right, you'll need help sorting them out. I've left instructions with a man I trust, Samuel Keller. You'll find his card in this box. Call him when you're in trouble, and tell him you're Henry Carson's girl. He'll know what to do. One more thing, any man who tries to make you small is not worthy of you. Don't let pride or fear keep you in a life that doesn't fit. You were not born to be anyone's afterthought. Love. Dad." I read it 3 times. The first time, I cried so hard the words blurred. The second, I got angry at him for hiding things, at myself for needing help, at Ethan for everything. The third time, my tears dried and something else took their place. Resolve. I dug deeper into the box. Beneath the letters were file folders stuffed with copies of deeds, bank statements, and contracts. My father's neat notes filled the margins. Phrases leaped out at me. Partnership agreement. Rental income. Samuel to hold until. I didn't understand half of what I was looking at, but I understood this much: my father had prepared for something. And he'd expected me to need more than memories. At the very bottom of the box, right where he said it would be, was a business card. Samuel D. Keller, Esq. A downtown address. A phone number that, miraculously, was still in service according to the tiny print on the back. I turned the card over between my fingers, the edges digging into my skin. Back home, there was a man in my guest room who believed I had nowhere to go. No money. No options. No power. Here, in a dusty box with my name on it, my father was telling me he'd never believed that about me, not even for a second. I pulled out my phone before I could talk myself out of it and dialed the number. It rang twice. Keller, a deep voice answered. Calm, no nonsense. Hi. My name is Naomi Carson, I said, my voice wavering more than I liked. My father was Henry Carson. He left your card in a box with a note. He said you'd know what to do if I ever called. There was a brief silence on the other end. Not the confused kind. The measuring kind. I was wondering when I'd hear from you, the man said at last. There was something almost warm beneath the professionalism. I'm sorry for your loss, Ms. Carson. Your father was a good man. Thank you, I whispered. I assume if you're calling, things in your life are complicated. I let out a humorless laugh. That's one word for it. Then why don't you come in, he said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My office downtown. Bring whatever you found in that box. And Ms. Carson? Yes? Whatever trouble you're in, he said, you're not in it alone. Your father made sure of that. When the call ended, I sat there in the dim light of the shop, phone pressed to my chest, surrounded by my father's words and the faint ticking of the wall clock. For the first time in a long time, I felt something other than fear. I felt the outline of a door I hadn't known existed, waiting to be opened. Now, sitting in this courtroom with Ethan's pen frozen over the final signature line and Judge Keller holding my father's will in her hands, I think about that door. About the next morning, walking into Samuel Keller's office with a box full of secrets and a heart full of questions. About the moment I realized my father was never just a mechanic and Ethan was never the one holding all the power. Those answers, the ones I found in that downtown office, are the reason I'm able to keep my back straight and my gaze steady while everyone in this room waits to see what happens next. Judge Keller clears her throat, drawing my attention back to the present. Let the record reflect, she says, eyes flicking between me and Ethan, that the court has received new documentation regarding the estate of Henry Carson. We will now review its contents. Ethan shifts in his seat, suddenly less sure of himself. Lena leans forward, confused, knitting her perfectly arched brows. And I fold my hands over the blue folder in front of me, the one Samuel helped me build, the one holding the truth my father left behind, and brace myself. The man who humiliated me during our divorce is about to learn that the story he's been telling about who holds the power in this marriage is, at best, a first draft. The real version started in a dusty garage, in a box with my name on it. Judge Keller's voice is steady as she announces the court will review my father's estate. Paper rustles. Ethan shifts beside me, that first thin line of worry cutting between his brows. I touch the edge of the blue folder in front of me, the one Samuel Keller helped me assemble, and my mind slides back to the first day I carried it into his office. Back to the moment I discovered my father was never just a mechanic, and Ethan was never just careless with money. 2 months earlier, downtown looked like another planet. Glass towers, mirrored windows, people in suits moving with the clipped urgency of people who bill by the quarter hour. I clutched the box from my father's shop to my chest like a shield as I stepped into the lobby of Keller and Associates. The receptionist smiled when I gave my name. Ms. Carson? Judge Keller is expecting you. You can head right in. Judge. That word made me falter. I'd seen the title printed on his card, but hearing it out loud made the weight of what I was doing sink in. This wasn't a casual chat. This was official. His office overlooked the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, shelves lined with thick legal volumes, a framed photo of him in a black robe shaking hands with someone important. But the man himself, tall, silver-haired, in a charcoal suit, looked more like a grandfather than a shark. He rose when I entered, extending a hand. "Naomi. I'm Samuel Keller. Thank you for coming." "Thank you for answering," I said, instantly wishing I'd come up with something less awkward. His eyes softened. "Your father told me you'd apologize for things that aren't your fault. Sit." He gestured to a leather chair. "Let's see what he left you." I set the box on the table between us. The cardboard suddenly seemed embarrassingly dusty against his polished wood. "I looked through some of it," I said. "There are deeds, bank statements, things I don't really understand." "That's what I'm here for." He opened the top folder with practiced ease. "I'll walk you through it, step by step. And if anything doesn't make sense, you stop me and ask." He spoke like that the whole time, slow, patient, as if he had all day. I did stop him. A lot. Because nothing he showed me lined up with the man I thought I'd known. "Your father owned this building," Samuel said, tapping a page. "And this one. And these 2 strip malls outside the city." I blinked at the list. "That can't be right." He worked 6 days a week just to keep the shop open. He worked 6 days a week, Samuel agreed, so he could buy properties while they were cheap and let the rent work for him later. He flipped to another section. Here are his shares in a development company. Nothing flashy, but profitable. He was an early investor. My father's signature stared back at me in crisp blue ink, alongside logos I recognized from news articles about up-and-coming neighborhoods. "You're telling me my dad was rich?" I asked, the word feeling wrong in my mouth. "I'm telling you he was smart," Samuel said. "And very private." He turned to another folder. "This is a property management firm. Your father was a silent owner. He let professionals handle the day-to-day, took his share of the profits, and kept his name off the marketing." Rows of numbers ran down the pages: rent collected, maintenance costs, net income. It might as well have been a foreign language, but the totals at the bottom were clear even to me. Why didn't he tell me? I whispered. "We could have. I don't know, fixed the roof on the shop. Paid off my student loans." I thought he was scraping by. Samuel slid a blue envelope out of the box and set it in front of me. "He anticipated that question," he said. "This is for you." From him. My fingers shook as I broke the seal. "Naomi. If you're reading this, you've already found more numbers than you ever wanted to see. Take a breath. This is the part one should have told you in person, but I was stubborn and thought I had more time. I didn't tell you about the investments because I wanted you to grow into yourself without them. Money can make people lazy. Or worse, it can make them targets. I wanted you to pick a man because you loved him, not because he saw dollar signs when he looked at you. You always had a good heart, kiddo. I wanted to make sure the person you gave it to was worthy." My throat closed around the words. Samuel cleared his throat gently. "Keep going. If you're with someone who lifts you up, this money will be your safety net, a way to chase dreams, help others, do some good. If you're with someone who clips your wings, this money will be your parachute." That's why I asked Samuel to hold the detailed will until you hit what we called a major crisis. He'll know what qualifies. If you're hearing from him about all this, it means something in your life has gone very wrong or very right. Either way, you'll need the truth. And you'll need help. I've tried to make sure you'd have both. Don't let anyone convince you you're helpless, Naomi. You were never that, not even when you were little and afraid of the dark. You just hadn't found the light switch yet. Love. Dad. Tears blurred the bottom of the page. I pressed my fingertips to my eyelids, embarrassed to be crying in front of a retired judge, but unable to stop. I swallowed. Angry. And grateful. And stupid. He was doing all of this, and I had no idea. Meanwhile, Ethan. I cut myself off. I hadn't planned to say his name. Samuel's gaze sharpened. Ethan Ward. Your husband. Yes. My voice sounded flat. He told you about him? Your father mentioned concerns, Samuel said carefully. He didn't like to speak ill of people, but he was not blind. I thought back to the way Dad used to watch Ethan at holidays, polite but reserved. The conversations they had in the garage that stopped when I walked in. What concerns? I asked. Samuel folded his hands. Naomi, I need you to understand something before we go further. Your father did not keep this from you to control you. He did it to protect you. One way he did that was by gathering information when he sensed you were in trouble. Ice slid down my spine. What information? He opened another folder. This one was thinner, but somehow heavier. Inside were photographs. Pages of them. Ethan shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize in front of a bank with signage in another language. Ethan and Lena at a restaurant, their bodies angled too close for it to be just business. Ethan signing documents in an office that definitely wasn't his. Samuel laid them out one by one like evidence on a crime show. About 3 years ago, he said, your father hired a private investigator. 3? Why? I whispered, though part of me already knew. He noticed discrepancies in Ethan's stories, Samuel said. Money moving that didn't add up. Business trips that didn't line up with conference schedules. He came to me and asked if there were legal ways to make sure you wouldn't be left destitute if things went south. He pulled out a printed email, the header familiar in a way that twisted my stomach. From Ethan Ward. To Lena Marsh. Subject, clean exit. I scanned the lines. Once the divorce goes through, she'll have nothing in her name. That's the point. No assets, no savings, no leverage. She'll have to take whatever we offer. After that, we're free. The room tilted. I gripped the armrests of my chair, knuckles aching. The divorce? He's been planning to leave me for years? Planning and laying the groundwork, Samuel said. Opening offshore accounts. Funneling money through shell companies. Paying himself consulting fees for non-existent work to drain the marital accounts. He tapped another sheet. These are transfers your father's investigator uncovered. Funds shifted from your joint account into entities solely under Ethan's control. Then moved again into accounts overseas. I stared at the columns of numbers, disbelief fighting with a horrible, dawning clarity. He told me we were struggling, I said slowly. That my father's shop was a burden. That he was carrying everything. Samuel's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. In reality, the company was profitable. The struggle was him diverting funds and making sure nothing stayed put long enough for you to claim it. He slid over another photo. Ethan and Lena, unmistakable, in front of a beach resort. His hand on her lower back, her head tipped back in laughter. "This is from a conference in Miami last year," Samuel said. "Paid for with company funds. Your father insisted we find out whether Ethan's financial betrayal extended to personal betrayal." I couldn't tear my eyes away from the picture. It felt like I was staring at someone else's life, someone else's foolishness. I swallowed hard. "This is a lot." "I know." Samuel's voice softened. "Take whatever time you need." I let out a shaky laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "I don't think time is what I need. I think I need a flamethrower. And a lawyer." "You already have one," Samuel said. "Two, actually." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out another business card. "Grace Lattimore. Family Law." "Grace is one of the best divorce attorneys I know," he said. "Your father and I discussed contingencies. If Ethan's behavior crossed certain lines, we were to bring her in." You all talked about my marriage like it was a legal problem waiting to happen," I said, stunned. "Because we saw patterns you couldn't from the inside," Samuel said gently. "Love can be a blinder, Naomi. It doesn't make you stupid. It makes you loyal." He let the words sit between us. For the first time, I didn't instinctively rush to defend Ethan. "What do we do?" I asked finally. "If I file for divorce, he'll wipe whatever's left. He'll spin it so I look ungrateful and unstable. He's good at that." "We're not going to give him time to spin anything," Samuel said. "We're going to let him hang himself with his own confidence." He outlined the plan. First, I would quietly retain Grace as my attorney. She'd file for divorce, requesting full financial disclosure. Ethan, convinced he could outsmart the system, would lie on those forms, underreport income, forget about certain accounts, downplay his company's value. Meanwhile, Samuel would finalize the will, my father's will, the complete version. The one that named me as heir to his entire portfolio, the properties, the development shares, the management firm. The will that listed, in meticulous detail, every asset he'd suspected Ethan of trying to hide, cross-referenced to documentation Samuel already possessed. "We'll let Ethan underestimate you in front of the court," Samuel said. "We'll let him posture and boast and try to paint you as weak and dependent. And then, his eyes met mine, we'll change the terms of the story in one stroke." "By reading the will," I whispered. "By reading the will," he confirmed. "Once it's on the record, his omissions become perjury. His clever transfers become fraud. And you," he leaned back, studying me. "You stop being the vulnerable spouse and start being the wealthier party who owns, among other things, the building his company rents." The idea was so surreal I almost laughed. Me, owning anything Ethan needed. "He'll never see it coming," I said. "That's the point," Samuel replied. "Men like Ethan assume the quiet woman beside them has no cards left to play. Your father made sure you do." The night before the hearing, I barely slept. Ethan did. He sprawled across the mattress, one arm thrown over his head, the picture of a man with nothing to worry about. A soft ping from his phone lit up the nightstand. I rolled over and squinted at the screen. "Lena, can't wait till it's official, Yellowheart." Another message popped up seconds later. "Bring me back something from court. A pen. A paperclip. A piece of her. My stomach clenched, but the usual shame didn't follow. Just a clean, cold anger. I slid out of bed and walked to the bathroom, shutting the door quietly. In the mirror, a woman with dark circles under her eyes stared back at me. "You're not the one who should be losing sleep," I told her. I thought about the folder Samuel had helped me build. About Grace's steady voice on the phone earlier that day. "You don't have to be loud tomorrow," she'd said. "You just have to be clear. Let Ethan talk. Let him show the judge exactly who he is. We'll handle the rest." Back in bed, I lay on my side, watching the rise and fall of Ethan's chest. I remembered the way he used to hold me after long days, murmuring promises about our future. I remembered the first time he called me too sensitive for crying when he dismissed my concerns. I remembered the precise moment I realized he didn't want a partner, he wanted an audience. Somewhere between those memories, something in me shifted. I wasn't naive anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even heartbroken, not in the way I'd expected. The grief I felt now was for the years I'd spent shrinking so he could feel big. Tomorrow, I decided, that version of me would be buried alongside the illusions I'd carried about our marriage. The morning of the hearing, I took my time getting dressed. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted to recognize myself. I chose the plum dress, simple, structured, respectful. The one that made me feel like a grown woman with a spine, not a girl playing dress-up in someone else's life. I straightened my hair, put on understated makeup, and fastened the gold watch my father had left me years before, the one small inheritance I'd known about. In the kitchen, Ethan was already dressed in his navy suit, scrolling through his phone with a faint smile. "Big day," he said when he saw me. "You ready to be free of me?" His tone suggested the answer should be yes, and grateful. I poured coffee calmly. "I'm ready," I said. It was the truth, just not in the way he thought. His phone buzzed again. A flash of yellow heart emojis on the screen. He grinned, then quickly turned the phone face down, as if he'd done me a favor by letting me see the affair in high definition for months already. "We'll be in and out," he said, grabbing his keys. "My guy says judges love a clean break." "You'll get a little something. I'll get my life back, everybody wins." He kissed the air near my cheek and walked out the door whistling. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then I picked up my blue folder, tucked it under my arm, and followed. Outside the courthouse, Grace was waiting at the bottom of the steps, dark suit crisp, expression composed. When she saw me, she smiled, not the condescending kind people had given me for months, but the kind that said she expected me to stand. "You look ready," she said. "I am," I replied, surprised to find that I meant it. Behind us, Ethan laughed at something his attorney said. His voice carried up the stone steps, bright and careless. In my peripheral vision, I saw Lena slip through a side entrance in that same yellow dress, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. He really believed this was his coronation. He had no idea the ceremony was actually a funeral for his illusions, his leverage, and the story where I walked out of this building broken. Grace touched my elbow, guiding me toward the doors. "Deep breath," she murmured. "Let him talk. Let him underestimate you. Then we'll light the fuse." I inhaled slowly, feeling the cool morning air fill my lungs. Somewhere above us, in a courtroom that smelled like varnish and old paper, Judge Marianne Keller was already waiting. So was her husband, the executor of my father's estate. So were the documents Ethan thought he'd buried. I squared my shoulders and stepped inside. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't be the woman who walked into Samuel Keller's office that first day, clutching a dusty box and apologizing for taking up space. I was my father's daughter. And today, my silence would finally stop looking like weakness and start looking like what it had always been. A storm gathering on the horizon, waiting for the right moment to break. Judge Keller's voice pulls me back into the present. Let the record reflect that the court has received new documentation pertaining to the estate of the petitioner's late father, Henry Carson. Before we finalize any settlement, we'll address its relevance. Ethan shifts beside me, irritation flickering over his features. His attorney, Mr. Cufflinks, leans forward. Your Honor, he says smoothly, with respect, we believe the settlement already submitted is more than fair, given Mrs. Carson's lack of income and assets. He slides a document toward the clerk like it's a winning bid at an auction. The proposal grants Mrs. Carson the jointly owned vehicle, certain personal effects, and a one-time payment of $25,000. In exchange, Mr. Ward retains his business and all associated accounts, and no spousal support is requested. He says grants like Ethan is a benevolent king handing out scraps. Ethan sits back, hands folded, radiating confidence. To anyone looking, he's a generous man giving his fragile ex-wife a soft landing. Behind us, Lena watches with open satisfaction, one leg crossed elegantly over the other, yellow dress bright against the wood benches. Her posture says inevitable. Her eyes say one. Judge Keller nods, her expression unreadable. Thank you, Mr. Preston. Ms. Lattimore, does your client accept these terms? Grace rises slowly, smoothing the front of her suit. Her face is calm, but I can feel the electric charge in the air. No, Your Honor, she says. At this time, Mrs. Carson does not accept. Ethan lets out a short laugh, the sound edged with disbelief. Of course she doesn't. Mr. Ward, the judge warns. Grace continues as if he hasn't spoken. We believe the settlement is based on incomplete and inaccurate representations of the marital estate. Furthermore, we have reason to believe Mr. Ward has concealed substantial assets from both my client and this court. A murmur ripples through the gallery. Preston bristles. Your Honor, that's a serious allegation. If counsel has proof, she should present it instead of. We intend to, Grace says. But first, we request that the executor of Henry Carson's estate be permitted to address the court. She turns. In the second row, Samuel Keller rises. The change in the room is almost physical. The casual buzz dies. Even Lena uncrosses her legs. Judge Keller's gaze flicks from her husband to Grace, then to me. For a beat, she's not just a judge but a wife, a woman caught between roles. Then the robe wins. Mr. Keller, she says formally. Please approach. He steps into the well of the courtroom, carrying the leather portfolio I've come to recognize. When he speaks, it's in the measured tone of a man who's spent his life choosing his words carefully. For the record, he says, my name is Samuel D. Keller. I am the executor of the estate of Henry Carson, deceased, and I am here pursuant to instructions your Honor's Court has already received. Preston frowns. Your Honor, I object to. Sit down, Mr. Preston, Judge Keller says, not unkindly. You'll have your chance to respond. Proceed, Mr. Keller. Samuel opens the portfolio and draws out a thick, sealed envelope, the same one I watched him slide across his desk weeks ago. This is the original, unabridged will and testament of Henry Carson, he says. Along with supplemental documentation he requested be disclosed only upon the occurrence of a major crisis involving his daughter, Naomi Carson Ward. He breaks the seal. The sound is small, but it might as well be a thunderclap. Ethan's hand tightens around his pen. Samuel begins to read. I, Henry James Carson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. The formal language washes over me, familiar now. What matters are the lines that follow. I leave my entire estate, including all real property, business interests, investment accounts, and liquid assets, to my daughter, Naomi Carson, as sole heir and beneficiary. Ethan's head snaps toward me so fast I hear his neck crack. That's impossible, he mutters. Samuel continues. Said estate includes, but is not limited to, full ownership of the properties listed in Schedule A. He lifts another document. Your Honor, Schedule A identifies 12 separate parcels of real estate. Among them, the commercial building located at 415 West Halsted, currently leased as office space to Ward Strategic Consulting, LLC, Mr. Ward's primary business. The silence in the courtroom fractures into whispers. I watch Ethan as the meaning sinks in. Color drains from his face. What? He rasps. No. That building belongs to a holding company your father-in-law acquired 10 years ago, Samuel says evenly. You've been paying rent to your wife's family for the duration of your tenancy. Lena shifts behind us, her confidence curdling into confusion. Samuel goes on, methodical. The estate also includes Henry Carson's 40% share in Halsted Development Group, as well as investment accounts totaling approximately $3.4 million at the time of this document's drafting, adjusted upwards according to current statements submitted under seal. I remember staring at those numbers in Samuel's office, thinking there must have been some mistake. There is no mistake now. Every word is being etched into the official record. Ms. Lattimore, Judge Keller says slowly, are you confirming that your client is the sole beneficiary of this estate? Yes, Your Honor, Grace replies. We have certified copies of all supporting documents for the court. Preston scrambles to his feet. Your Honor, with respect, this is highly irregular. Even if Mrs. Carson has come into some inheritance, it has no bearing on Mr. Ward's independent assets or the settlement he has generously proposed. Grace doesn't even look at him. If it please the court, this does change things considerably. Mr. Ward has repeatedly represented my client as financially dependent and vulnerable. We now have evidence she is, in fact, the wealthier spouse and his tenant. A low, disbelieving chuckle ripples through the benches. Ethan's jaw works silently. He looks like someone yanked the floor out from under him mid-strut. Lena's eyes dart back and forth between us, searching for the version of the story where this still ends with her getting a ring. She doesn't find it. Judge Keller raps her gavel once, bringing the room to heel. Order. We'll have order in this courtroom. She turns to Grace. Counsel, you mentioned concealed assets. Proceed. Grace nods, stepping forward. This is the part we rehearsed until I could recite it in my sleep. Your Honor, along with Mr. Keller's documentation, we submit exhibits A through M financial records and investigative reports commissioned by the decedent prior to his passing, corroborated by recent subpoenas. She hands a thick stack of documents to the clerk. These records show Mr. Ward transferring significant funds from joint marital accounts into shell companies and offshore institutions, she says. The transfers are disguised as consulting fees and business expenses, but there is no corresponding work product or legitimate invoice. Preston jumps in. Your Honor, complex financial structures are not inherently suspect. Many entrepreneurs. Grace holds up another page. We also have email correspondence between Mr. Ward and Ms. Lena Marsh. She gestures to the back row, discussing a so-called clean exit. In it, Mr. Ward states, and I quote, "Once the divorce goes through, she'll have nothing in her name." That's the point. A collective hiss sweeps through the room. Ethan's eyes dart to me, then to Lena. She has gone utterly still. Furthermore, Grace continues, bank records show regular transfers from one of Mr. Ward's shell entities into an account held solely in Ms. Marsh's name. These transfers match the time periods labeled as company retreats and business conferences in Mr. Ward's expense reports. Judge Keller's expression hardens by degrees. Are you suggesting Ms. Marsh benefited from funds that should have been part of the marital estate? Yes, Your Honor, Grace says. We allege that Mr. Ward not only attempted to conceal assets from his spouse during divorce proceedings but also engaged in tax evasion and misappropriation of corporate funds for personal use. The judge turns to Ethan. Mr. Ward, did you disclose these accounts and transfers in your financial affidavit to this court? Sweat beads at his hairline. Those are business decisions, he says weakly. Not personal assets. That is not what I asked you, she replies. Did you disclose them? He hesitates. It's only a second, but it's long enough. Mr. Ward, you are under oath, Judge Keller reminds him. Failure to disclose material financial information in a divorce proceeding can constitute fraud on the court. Combined with potential tax violations, we could be looking at criminal charges. For the first time since I've known him, Ethan genuinely looks afraid. This is ridiculous, he says, but the bluster has leaked out of his voice. Naomi, tell them this is being blown out of proportion. Lena leans forward, eyes wide. Ethan, you told me. Stay out of this, he snaps over his shoulder. Judge Keller lifts a brow. I suggest everyone choose their next words very carefully. Ms. Lattimore, anything further? Yes, Your Honor, Grace says. In light of these revelations, we are requesting a revised order, that my client retain full rights to her inheritance, that all assets Mr. Ward attempted to conceal be returned to the marital estate and awarded to Mrs. Carson as compensation, and that Mr. Ward be held financially responsible for the costs of this litigation. Ethan's hand finds my forearm under the table, fingers clamping down. Naomi, he hisses, voice pitched low enough that only I can hear. Baby, listen to me. We can fix this. We don't need to do it this way. I look at his hand, then at his face. There's no remorse there, not really. Just panic. A man watching the chessboard topple and scrambling for any move left. You humiliated me for years, I say quietly. You emptied our accounts behind my back. You planned to walk out of here and leave me with nothing while your girlfriend watched from the second row. His mouth opens, closes. You would have destroyed me, I continue. My father saved me. Even from the grave, he saw you more clearly than I ever did. I slide my arm out of his grip. For once, he has no comeback. The ruling comes faster than I expect. Judge Keller reviews the paperwork in front of her, occasionally conferring with Samuel in low tones. When she finally looks up, the room holds its breath. Based on the evidence presented, she begins, this court finds that Mr. Ward has engaged in deliberate concealment of assets during these proceedings, and that Mrs. Carson's recently revealed inheritance is fully separate, non-marital property. She turns to Ethan. Your conduct has been, at best, unethical and, at worst, potentially criminal. I will be referring the matter of your financial disclosures and tax records to the district attorney's office for further review. A soft moan escapes him. As for the dissolution of this marriage, she continues, the court orders the following. Mrs. Carson retains full and exclusive rights to the estate of Henry Carson, including all real property, business interests, and investments. All assets Mr. Ward attempted to conceal, as enumerated in Exhibits A through M, are forfeited and awarded to Mrs. Carson as compensation for his misconduct. Mr. Ward is ordered to pay $200,000 in damages to Mrs. Carson for the financial hardship caused by his fraudulent behavior. He will also be responsible for all of Mrs. Carson's legal fees incurred in these proceedings. Given Mrs. Carson's current and future financial position, and Mr. Ward's conduct, no spousal support will be paid by Mrs. Carson to Mr. Ward, now or in the future. Her gaze sharpens. Finally, Mr. Ward, be advised that additional civil and criminal investigations may follow. I strongly suggest you obtain separate counsel. The gavel falls with a sharp crack. Court is adjourned. For a moment, no one moves. Then everything happens at once. Ethan's shoulders slump, the fight draining out of him. He sinks back into his chair, eyes unfocused, like someone just flipped a switch and turned off all the noise he used to fill the room with. Behind us, Lena stands abruptly. Her chair screeches across the floor. She stares at him as if seeing him for the first time without the glow of money. You told me you had it handled, she says, voice tight. You told me she was pathetic. Lena, wait, he starts, reaching for her. She steps back. Lose my number, she says. Then she turns on her heel and stalks out, yellow dress blazing a trail to the exit. Reporters rustle in the back. Court staff shuffle papers. A bailiff approaches Ethan, murmuring something about remaining available for questioning. Amid the chaos, I stand. For years, the simple act of rising from a chair in front of Ethan felt like asking permission. Now it feels like claiming space that was always mine. Grace squeezes my arm, pride softening her features. Samuel gives me a small nod from across the room, something like satisfaction in his eyes. As I walk down the aisle toward the doors, heads turn. Not in pity. In recognition. I don't look back at Ethan. There's nothing back there I need. 6 months later, the courtroom feels like a different lifetime. I stand on a small stage in a renovated brick building on the east side, a blue ribbon stretched in front of double glass doors. Above us, new signage reads, The Henry Carson Literacy Center. Cameras flash as I cut the ribbon. Inside, shelves of donated books line freshly painted walls. There's a computer lab in the back for job searches and GED study, a corner with beanbags and picture books for kids whose parents can't afford new stories. We funded the renovation with a fraction of the returns from one of my father's investment accounts. Your dad would be proud, Samuel says quietly as the crowd filters in. I smile. I hope so. He always said people came into his shop feeling stupid about something they didn't understand. I like to think we're fixing the same problem from a different angle. After the opening, I drive across town to the house I picked out myself. It's not the biggest property I could afford. It's not in the trendiest neighborhood. But the front porch gets good afternoon light, and there's a little patch of yard where I've planted tomatoes and basil. The kitchen cabinets are the exact warm wood tone my father always loved. I unlock the door and breathe in the faint scent of lemon cleaner and coffee, the smell of a home that belongs to me. In the spare room, a sleek white desk holds my laptop and a neatly stacked pile of files. Naomi Carson Consulting started small, helping nonprofits streamline their messaging, then advising women-owned businesses on branding and fundraising. Word spread. Now I have more work than I can comfortably handle and the freedom to say no when I want to. There's a knock at the door. When I open it, Marcus stands on the porch, holding 2 cups of coffee in a brown paper bag that smells like fresh pastries. He's a project manager from one of the nonprofits I helped, kind eyes, easy smile. We've been seeing each other for a few months, not in the whirlwind, everything all at once way I fell into things with Ethan, but in slow, thoughtful steps. I come bearing bribes, he says. Triple shot latte and a croissant with so much butter it should be illegal. You know my love language, I reply, stepping aside to let him in. He glances at the photos on the wall as we walk to the kitchen, my father in front of his shop, the ribbon cutting at the literacy center, me with a group of women entrepreneurs at a workshop. No wedding photos. No reminders of the man who tried to write the ending to my story without my consent. You ready for tonight? He asks, handing me a coffee. Big speech for the foundation gala. As ready as I'll ever be, I say. If I can survive my ex-husband's meltdown in court, I can survive a room full of donors. He chuckles. Fair point. Later, at the gala, I stand at a podium facing a crowd of people who've chosen to invest in the work we're doing. My voice doesn't shake when I talk about my father, about the way he believed knowledge was power even when he couldn't finish high school himself. Respect isn't given, I say, quoting him, it's earned. But he also taught me something else, something I didn't really understand until this year. I pause, letting the room quiet. Some people will mistake your silence for weakness, I say. They'll think if you're not shouting, you're not paying attention. They're wrong. Silence can be observation. It can be strategy. It can be the space where you gather yourself before you stand up and change everything. I think of Ethan's stunned face in the courtroom. Of Lena's retreat. Of the moment Judge Keller read my father's words into the record, turning what was supposed to be my humiliation into his reckoning. I spent years shrinking myself so someone else could feel big, I continue. I won't do that again. Not for a man, not for money, not for anyone. After the applause, Marcus finds me at the edge of the crowd. He doesn't say you were amazing, or you're so strong. He just squeezes my hand and says, I'm glad you're doing exactly what you were meant to do. And for once, I believe it. On the drive home, the city lights blur into streaks of gold on the windshield. I think about the girl who walked into a dusty garage, clutching a box with her name on it and no idea who she really was. I think about the woman who walked out of that courtroom months later, spine straight, head high, the weight of her father's legacy a mantle instead of a burden. Respect isn't given, it's earned. My father was right about that. But the part he didn't say, the part one had to learn myself, is this. You don't have to earn it by breaking yourself in half for people who will never see your worth. You earn it by standing in your own life, in your own truth, without apology. I pull into my driveway, the porch light glowing softly against the night, and smile. I am no longer Ethan Ward's wife. I am no longer the woman who sat in a courtroom thinking she had nothing. I am Naomi Carson. I am powerful. I am free. I am my father's daughter. Subscribe before the next story drops. Comment your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next story.